All right, my name is Nick Fenney, and I'm going to be presenting Chapter 14 about the world of children. Let's get to it. So, the main concept that this chapter explains is formal operational thought. In other chapters covered in class, we discussed intellectual growth and limitations for children, and this dealt with infants through age 11. PA Stage 4 concerns children older than 11, which is otherwise known as the adolescent stage. In adolescence, PJ states that adolescents reach full potential for formal operational thought when one can use deductive reasoning and logical thinking for abstract concepts. The goal of this presentation is to learn vocabulary and examples involving this train of thought, reflect on our behavior during this time period of our lives, and learn how testing for intelligence affects adolescence. So, egocentrism. Adolescent egocentrism is defined as a young person's inability to distinguish between his or her own abstract thinking and those of others. Two forms include having an imaginary audience, which is when people are more concerned about your thoughts and appearance rather than themselves, and then personal fables. This means false thoughts adolescents have about their own thoughts, beliefs, and influences. So let's go over a couple examples. Spending more time than necessary working on your physical appearance, which I feel like is something that most kids go through, as adolescents may think every person will pay attention to the little details and how they look. This can be portrayed as not wanting to attend school if a kid has a bad haircut or doesn't have the same kind of clothes compared to their friends or their peers. Moving on to personal fables, the example I included was about taking risks. So drug and alcohol use before and during school is a common theme I've witnessed during my time as a student and a teacher. As a middle school teacher, I have seen students smoking weed in the bathroom, during class in the classroom. I've seen in high school students drinking and smoking weed, during school, around the sports complexes, on school grounds. So this is just a personal fable. It's an unnecessary risk that students take, and it's based on personal beliefs at a young age. Adolescents may find this to be an accepted norm. So my students find that smoking weed in school is an accepted norm, and they obviously do not understand or care about future risks or consequences that may be associated with drug or alcohol use at school. So for a quick turn and talk, the question is, can you think of an example from your own adolescence where concepts of imaginary audience or personal fables played a major role in your lives? So the two concepts we just discussed, where or when did they play a major role in your lives? I know for my personal example, I think about trying out for sports in high school, early high school, like 9th and 10th grade. And I felt embarrassed for not always doing well at those tryouts. And I felt that the other kids trying out were focused on me and how good or bad I was doing. And then I got older and I realized that they were definitely just focused on themselves and what they were doing. And they were probably having similar thoughts, no matter how good or bad they were at the sport. They just wanted to make the team, but they were also worried about how others feel, because that's just the normal feeling when you're an adolescent. So moving on to a new topic, we're going to talk about assessing intelligence. In 1905, the first recorded practical intelligence test was done by Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon. This predicted which children would perform well in regular education settings as opposed to special education. Today, intelligence tests are done by psychologists to test for abnormalities such as ADD or ADHD, mental illness, or emotional problems. This may be useful, but modern psychology argues that these tests focus on what students have learned in the past and have no way of measuring what students are capable of in the future. So, assessing intelligence can be used for those with gifted intelligence, and then you can go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and it can also assess if someone has an intellectual disability. So what is an intellectual disability? This is characterized by three main things. The first is taking an IQ test, which in receiving lower than a 75 on that IQ test. The second would be difficulty with adaptive behavior. In a school setting, this would look like having a lot of trouble following classroom rules and classroom norms. And then finally, this usually appears early on in life, such as early adolescence or even before the age of 11. So the definition of gifted and talented children, these are kids who show extraordinary achievement in multiple different domains. Some school districts offer gifted classes, some don't. I know personally, thinking about these two definitions, when I worked in the Springfield school system, there was definitely a special education classes with their own department, and then I taught inclusion classes where kids who were not in the special education class always were put in an inclusion class, which I taught as normal. They just had certain IEPs and goals that they worked on while I taught, and there was no gifted class. But now that I work in Chicopee, I have those same inclusion classes. The school has their separate special education department, and I also teach an honors class. So I teach both gifted and kids with intellectual disabilities currently in separate classes. So some pros of assessing intelligence includes students maximizing potential in school, early access to how intelligent a student currently is, and a tailored education that may fit their needs. So while there's some pros for assessing intelligence, there's certainly cons as well. One is test anxiety. Students would need constant yearly testing to see if they fall in either a gifted or special needs category. This creates a lot of unneeded pressure. Students already take, in the two districts I've worked at, they take 3 sets of MAT testing, so that's 6 days of testing per year, and they also take 3 to 5 MCAS tests per year. So you're already looking at about 10 tests per year, and then on top of that, you have some assessing intelligence tests too, to see if you're gifted or if you have an intellectual disability. So you're already looking at 10 plus days of testing out of 180 school days. So one can certainly argue that that might be unnecessary and creates a lot of anxiety and mental health issues for children. Second, the education system has complex aspects where cultural biases and issues are exploited, and this very much includes intelligence testing. Test developers' backgrounds, cultures, and experiences do not match many of the students taking the tests. So again, using my personal experience, I know that we've looked it up in another class at Elms, where 10% of the students in the Springfield school system are white, and 50% of the students in the Chicopee district are white. So it's safe to assume that the people creating these assessing intelligence tests are older white men and women. So their experience is much different than a school district where 90% of the kids are not white and 50% of the school system is not white. And again, they're also much older, so times have changed quite a bit. And then poor test results lead to more children of color being placed in special education classes. This creates what is called a stereotype threat, where a child seems they need to accept negative views and expectations regarding their life. So to discuss more about the pros and cons about assessing intelligence, there's a link for the YouTube video. I will post the link to the professor and you guys can watch it yourselves. It'll be easier that way. So after watching the video, you can turn and talk or think to yourself, do the pros regarding assessing intelligence outweigh the cons, and how can we make testing less culturally biased? So the last topic that we'll cover today is improving the transition from school to work. So around the ages of 16 to 18, which is later adolescence, students typically look to graduate high school and move on and do something else in their life. So students need to make a formal decision about how they want to proceed in their life. Options include entering the workforce, going to a community or four-year college, learning a trade, or even none of the above and not doing any of those things. So graduating high school is key for most of these concepts. It shows potential employers and colleges that one was able to handle showing up to school for 4 years and completing consistent classwork. Views about college are changing with the rising costs and inflation in our country. And a recent survey from the Pew Research Center states that only 22% of US adults say college is worth it financially, even with taking out loans. And I definitely will agree with this, that I am part of the 78%, where I feel like college was worth it for the experience, but now taking out loans, it certainly makes me wonder, what if I were to go into a trade, or what if I went to vocational school instead? I feel like with Elms in grad school, it's worth it because the city of Chicopee pays for most of it. But if I was paying the full price, I don't think it would be worth it, especially we all can all agree that teachers do not make that much money. So how can we make transitioning out of high school easier? So one key factor would be internships. This allows high school and college students to try out a career field and see if they enjoy it or not. Positive mentorship opportunities in middle school and high school, or otherwise just like having a mentor while you're an adolescent would be huge. This would involve teaching and advising students in a work or school setting. Not every student has a positive and encouraging role model at home to advise them about potential careers. And then lastly, cooperative education programs, also known as vocational schools. Students can work in a career such as an auto shop or culinary arts as two examples, and they can get paid and have credit for high school while they are doing this. So to end my presentation, there is a flashcard activity. All you have to do is click the link, and then there will be a white button that will tell you to restart the flashcards, and there is 8 flashcards. You can quiz yourself to see if you were paying attention today. And I have my works cited, and that's it. Thank you.